false? The world was once flooded. If you said true, you're wrong. You see, the world is still flooded. Let's try another question. How many oceans are there in the world? Now, some people might say 7, some people might say 5, but the reality is there is only one ocean in the world. We've come up with different names for different regions of that one giant flooded body of water, but it's all one huge flooded area that we have dubbed the ocean. When I look at a map, I see a water world with a few large islands on it. Everything in me screams out that this is not the way that it once was, that we are a land-based realm, that there should be more land than there is water. If you ask mainstream science, you'll hear that the waters came from giant ice comets that bombarded the Earth during its earlier stages of development. While there are many problems with this theory, there are more recent ideas that say there may be more water beneath the Earth than there is above it. This is known as the transition zone between the upper and lower mantle. Given the current model of the Earth and the assumed average temperatures of the upper and lower mantles, this theory has a few holes in it as well. While every culture in the world has a legendary flood story, mainstream academia and mythology both agree that the floodwaters that we call oceans came from above and below. Cosmologies from around the world speak of other realms that exist above and below us, and those realms are separated by water. Legends say that the Titans, giants, or gods opened the portals from above and the fountains of the deep and let the waters come crashing down. But it's not just myth and stories that give us evidence for the world being flooded. Unknown and ancient artifacts have been and are being pulled up from the ocean all of the time. There are seashells, shark teeth, and other aquatic fossils found on the peaks of some of the tallest mountains in the world. Even temples and pyramids have been found below the ocean surface. My own personal evidence for our world being flooded are the smooth and rolling hills we have all seen wherever you might live. Rolling hills are not created by plate tectonics, continental drift, or erosion over millions of years. They came to be due to all of the debris that was moved about by the currents of the flood. This helps to explain some of the geographic anomalies in our realm. The other proof that has me convinced that we live in a flooded world is the ocean itself. Like I always say, that's just way too much water, and it's not even drinkable. Or has it ever bothered you that we've spent countless amounts of money to explore what they call space, and yet we seem to be completely ignoring the massive floodwaters that cover most of the known world? The oceans are almost entirely unexplored. Classic misdirection. Hey, look over here, but don't look over here. Perhaps it's for the same reason that they say that the inner Earth is filled with lava. They don't want us to explore the other planes of existence. Also, can you imagine what secrets lay at the bottom of the flooded waters that we call the ocean? Like so many other things, the ocean is off limits, sometimes legally, but most of the time it's a fear-based mentality that becomes a mental barrier between ourselves and discovery. The world is flooded. Before the sinking of Atlantis or Noah's Ark, our world had much, much more land. The good news is, this realm operates on the law of cycles. The way things once were is the way that they will be again. A prophecy was once given to a man who looked into a post-apocalyptic future and said, "I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and the sea was no more." But you don't have to take my word for it.
You just listen to the old Pork Chop Express here now and take his advice on a dark and stormy night when the lightning's crashing and the thunder's rolling and the rain's coming down in sheets thick as lead. Just remember what old Jack Burton does when the earth quakes and the poison arrows fall from the sky and the pillars of heaven shake. Yeah, Jack Burton just looks that big old storm right square in the eye and he says, "Give me your best shot, pal. I can take it."
Aloha! What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's live stream. So, let's see. I hope you enjoyed that quick little introduction. I felt like that's an old video, but I felt like that was an important one to play. So let me get that down for just a second. 200, wow, over 200 people watching right now. Hey, we're on our way to 100,000. This is my makeshift, visualization for 100,000 subscribers. Welcome to my channel. I hope you guys have a good time today. And even more importantly, I hope you take something away from today's presentation. Today, we're talking about the Great Flood. The Great Flood of the world. It blows my mind how many people worldwide believe that this is just a myth, that's just a legend, that it's just a story, that it's basically a lie. You know what I mean? When it's not. It's not a lie, it's alive. It's a reality. It's something that actually has happened, and the evidence is everywhere. It's all over the place. Just like we talked about in the video that you just saw, the oceans are evident that the world is flooded. Currently, most of the world is flooded right now, and I can't stress that enough. So I thought I would do a video today talking about, answering some questions about like how the world was flooded, and more importantly, how it will be flooded again. The good news is the next apocalyptic cycle is by fire, not by water. I know some of you might be thinking, how is that good news? Well, I'll tell you how it's good news. The water, the deluge, is the worst one of all, according to the myths and the legends. It's not one that you would like to get through, and it's one that's much more difficult to survive whenever the flood waters come and pouring down from the skies and the fountains of the deep erupt. So, the good news is the fire one happens much quicker. It doesn't last as long as all of the flooding of the entire world. And it's easier to survive than the entire earth flooding. So if I forget anything, feel free to remind me in the chat. I do have the chat pulled up right over here to the side. Big, huge shout out to Max Collins, who's throwing out some free memberships, giving some free memberships as gifts to random people in the chat today. Thank you so much, Max Collins. Appreciate you again. So let's check out some stuff. I would like to start off by answering a very important question that has been asked of me in the comments section time and time again. And it's a logical question. It's a reasonable question to ask. Many people recall. Now, we're going to talk about the many flood myths across the world, across time. There's not just one. It's not just from the Bible. Okay. There's not just Noah's Ark. Basically, many people, especially white people or people in America or Christian countries or whatever, they're more familiar with that particular telling of the world flooding, but there are so many more, and we're going to check out quite a few of them. We're going to check out a handful of them. But what I want to do first is I'd like to answer the question. Many people have asked me, how can the world flood again if in the Bible God said that he would not flood the world ever again? As a matter of fact, he gave a rainbow up in the sky in order to be a symbol that he would never ever wipe out humanity by the way of a worldwide flood. So that's where we're going to start this video off. So let me go ahead and bring up some screen sharing. Don't you just love researching? I do. It's one of my favorite things in the whole world. Hey, what's up, me in the past? That's weird. This is super meta now. All right, let's see. Let's go ahead and pause that so it's easier on my computer. Now, I'm going to play with the screen for just a sec. Hopefully I can do this the correct way. I would like to scooch this over. Now, what you're looking at right now, there's different versions of the Bible, and there's different books that can help you in order to better understand the Bible. If you're interested in the Bible, okay? I am, and that's where my truth-seeking journey led me on my path, quite some time ago. Many of you know that I went to Bible college. I wanted to be a youth pastor. I was a Christian rap artist at one point in time. So this is a huge part of who I am. However, I don't just take in and study and respect the Bible only, but all of the world's religious books and scriptures and ancient writings and holy writings. And I like to re-examine them and research them out, or research them, right? So let's take a look at this particular verse. This is called an interlinear version of the Bible. I highly recommend using this if you're into etymology or the study of words and their origins. This will show you what it says in the Bible. So for example, this one right here, let's just shrink this down a bit. This is that particular verse in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, chapter 9, verse 11, or 9:11. about an emergency, about a worldwide emergency that happened, that cracked off whenever the world, this is actually in reference to the flooding of the world and the story of Noah and his family and the ark and the animals, etc., right? So this is the exact verse coming up here, and it says, thus I establish my covenant with you, and never shall be cut off all flesh again by the waters of the flood, and never shall there be again a flood to destroy the earth. Now, that is the only verse in the entire Bible that I personally have ever heard any biblical scholars reference whenever teaching other people that God said that he would never flood the world ever again. So I talk about cyclical cataclysms and how the world was already destroyed by water many times, and subsequently during the next cycle by fire many times over. We go through these cycles of water and fire, then back to water, then back to fire. So it stands to reason that those who have read this particular verse would say, well, wait a minute, like if God's word is infallible and God does not lie, and God said in the Bible, and I heard my pastor at church tell me that the world would not be flooded ever again, and he showed me this verse, how do you reconcile that, right? That's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a good look at what it really says in the original language, or at least in the modern Hebrew, right? We could go a step further and translate this into Phoenician or Paleo Hebrew, but we'll save that for another time, okay? If you're interested in things like that, I highly recommend checking out my video I did about the 10 Commandments, where I actually transliterated the modern Hebrew back into the Phoenician, and then I went over what all of the 10 Commandments literally mean in their original script. Cross 41, hey, thank you so much for the donation. I super appreciate it. All right, cool. Let's take a look at this verse. Now, basically it says, I'm going to read this in my own words. God says in the Bible, in the Old Testament, so here's my promise to you. I will never again destroy all humans by the waters of a flood ever again, and there will never be a flood to destroy the earth, okay? Now, let's take a look at this, a closer look at what this is in the original Hebrew script, okay? This part right here, you see that? It says, thus I establish, okay, so we're going to skip over that. This part is actually unspoken. You'll notice the aleph and the tav, or the beginning and the end of the Hebrew alphabet, which is really interesting. But of particular note, let's skip over my covenant, or Bariti, and we're going to go to this section right over here. Never. Remember how I was talking about in some of my previous videos that oftentimes the word forever is mistranslated, and it actually means in the original languages not forever without end, eternally, since the beginning of all time and throughout all of time. Right? Usually the word forever means for an age, or up until a certain point. For example, there's a Hebrew prayer that ends with the words Leolam Vayed, or Va'od, which is exactly what you see right here. Leolam means until eternity, or until the age, right? Vayad means up until. So up until the age is how that particular Hebrew prayer goes. Now, you'll see that it says right here, let me make this a little bigger, just so I know that not everybody is familiar with this language. So I'm going to break it down for you. I'm going to make it really big, actually, so we can see all of the letters here. Let's see, my covenant with you. Here we go. And never, right by my head there, pow. All right, so he says, I establish my covenant with you, and never again shall be cut off humankind, right? All right, cool. I just want to make sure I'm in the right spot. Thus I establish my covenant with you, and never shall be cut off. So this right here, let me make sure you guys can see it on my side. All right, so this letter that looks like a hook, this is the Vav. This is the letter, or the number 6 in the ancient languages, okay? It's literally a picture form of a hook. That's why it looks like a nail that's just going straight down into the ground. That's representative of the blue beam that shoots up out of Mount Meru, like we've talked about time and time again, right? And usually it conveys attached to, or of, and things of that nature, right? And basically it's a preposition, or it's a prefix, I should say. It's a prefix to the next word that's right next to it. So this is a prefix for this actual word right here. This staff-looking hook thing right here, that looks like a question mark, this is the letter Lamed, which is equivalent to the English letter L. This over here is Aleph, which is sort of takes the place of a vowel sound, and usually it's an A or an O type of a sound. It's sort of more of a guttural sound the further back in time you go. But this says low, essentially, okay? If we say it in a modern English dialect or accent, this would be low. Okay, now let's check out the word low, because this has been translated never. This is lo, which means of low, or of whatever low is. So let's check out this word low. Lamed Aleph. Check that out real quick. Now, scooch this back over. Now, if you look at, there's another good book that you can use in order to better understand the words that are in the Bible, and that's called a concordance, okay? The concordance that I typically use, there's many different ones, is called Strong's. So right here we see the Strong's Concordance Hebrew reference, or the Hebrew word, and it gives the number of the word in so that you can find it there, see? So this is the Strong's Concordance, that's the name of the concordance. We're going to be looking up the Hebrew word low, and it's listed as number 3808 in the concordance. So you can actually follow along if you have a biblical concordance with you. If not, you can look it up online as well, just like we have. All right, so you can see that the pronunciation right here is low. Hebrew is read from right to left. And I believe that one of the main reasons that so many of the writings of the past are from right to left, and then they switch from left to right, typically, is because there was an energetic flux. There was an energetic reversal. There was the electromagnetic reversal that we go through, which flipped everything around, including our perspectives, and switches us from right brain thinking to left brain thinking. So people went from being left-handed and writing from right to left, just like you see here in the old languages, many of them, to being right-handed and using their left brain and writing from left to right. Okay, so let's check out this word. It means not. So low means not. Okay, so let's go back over here, and I'm going to shrink this down just a bit. All right, so he says, "Thus I establish my covenant with you." Never or not, right? It basically means not never, but not. Okay, there's a big difference between not and never, ever, ever. Okay, not shall be cut off, or nothing shall be cut off, all flesh again. So all flesh shall not be cut off again. And then it says, by the waters, which is MMI, right here next to my head here, of the flood, and never, here it is again, shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. All right, now let's focus on another word here. So we looked at not, okay? So not never, but not. We're going to look at this word again. Now this is the word od in Hebrew. This Y-looking letter, this glyph right here, it looks like the letter Y in English. That's actually more of a guttural vowel sound. It's turned into a vowel these days. And then we have the vav once more, and then dalet. So aud, basically. Aud, or od, is how you would say that. It's kind of like saying odd, basically, with a hard accent. So it says again. So let me put this so everybody can see it here, because this is pretty crucial to what we're looking at. I'm just going to stick it right next to my face here. All right, cool. So never shall be cut off, or it should read, no shall be cut off all flesh. So not all flesh will be cut off, aud, again. So let's look at aud and see what that means, right? We looked up low. That's what the 10 Commandments actually begin with. So instead of you shall not, it actually says lo, which means no, or do not, basically, or will not, etc. Now, if we look at aud in the Hebrew Concordance, right here, and we check that out, you can see, I gotta kind of move it around here. It means up until a certain time. Ah, now that's different. It says yet, still, and up until a certain time. Okay? So, aud, which is the word that was translated by the writers of the Bible, some of the writers of the Bible, as meaning, let's go back, as meaning again, right? As in ever again, like forever, like never, ever, ever without end, right? That's not what it's saying in the original Hebrew. What it's saying in the original Hebrew is saying, all flesh shall not be cut off up until a certain time. Exactly what it says right here, up to a certain time, or yet. All flesh will not be cut off yet. Meaning God is having this conversation with Noah and he's saying, hey, don't worry, it's over, okay, for a while. It's over for a while. I'm just saying it in my own language, okay? But that is what the Hebrew words are conveying to us, the original Hebrew words, not the English translation, but the original Hebrew. So let's take a look at it again. Let me see if I can fix this up here. All right, let me make it a little smaller. Boom. I like the words to be nice and large on the screen so that people can see them. All right, cool. I feel like that's pretty good. Now, let's take a look at everything. So he says, Thus I establish my covenant. Wow, let's not highlight it. Hold up. All right. Thus I establish my covenant with you. Okay, so here's my promise to you is what God is saying, okay, in the Bible. Now I'm gonna translate it. I'm gonna translate it according to the actual original words, okay? And you got to remember, it's not in various languages. It's not said always in the order that you're reading it, okay? Sometimes you kind of have to jump back and forth because some words are in front that actually describe words in the back, etc. Right? So it says, "All flesh shall not," which is lo, "be cut off until a certain time," or all flesh shall not be cut off yet. This is crucial. This word right here, aud, is a crucial word in this particular passage, okay? And then it goes on saying, by the waters of the flood, and not shall there be. That's interesting that it says shall there be when this is actually, this is the tetragrammaton right here. Oh, no, it's not. It's close to it though. That says Yahya. I thought it was Yahweh. Anyways, and then here we have Aud, which is not a flood to destroy the earth. So, the crucial part of this entire thing is the word Aud, which does not mean ever again. It means up until a certain time, right? Or all flesh shall not yet be cut off. Okay, so he's trying to calm Noah down, okay? Noah and his family and the story, they're super worried, okay? The whole earth just flooded. They don't know if it's done. They don't know if it's coming back. They're really worried about it, as many people during the next cataclysm will also naturally be worried. When's it going to happen again? And they'll institute holidays and holy times and set apart times right around the time that they experience this, and they'll start tracking what time of year it was when these types of apocalypses and cataclysms and stuff happened, right? So, literally in the Bible, God, this is just to answer the question that many people have asked, right? Because many people are told by Christian scholars and their pastors and their preachers and people on television, televangelists and stuff, who may not understand this translation, okay? They've been told from their elders and their elders and their elders, going back however far, from the English translation. Oh, it says in the Bible that God will never again ever flood the world. Not a good translation, okay? This is my perspective and my research that I'm sharing with you, okay? So with that understanding, and that's the only place in the Bible that it says that I'm aware of, with that understanding, now we can go back to talking about and including cyclical cataclysms that happen over and over again, that jump back and forth between a flood and a fire. A flood and a fire. So if there's any questions, once I'm done with this presentation, I will jump into the chat if anyone has any questions, okay? I'm not going to answer questions now, but once I'm done, I'll let you know, and I'll jump into the chat and answer some questions. Usually people have a lot of questions when it comes to biblical translations and what does the Bible say and stuff like that. And it's one of my favorite areas to talk about. Now, we're going to stay in the Bible before we get into some other flood myths and legends and histories of the world. So I want to talk about this because it's relevant to the times that we live in now. In the Bible, this is going to be in the book of Matthew, as you can see up here. In the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verses 37 through 39, this is going to be the King James Version. It says, "But as in the days of Noah, or as the days of Noah were, or just like it was during the time that Noah lived, okay? So also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For as the days that were before the flood, the people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also be the coming of the Son of Man." Now, I'm going to reinterpret that and just give it to you in my own language because the King James Version can be very difficult, okay? Now, in the Bible, it's talking about the Son of Man. People interpret that as being Jesus or the Son of God, etc., right? I'm not here to really argue on that point. I'm speaking from the perspective of the plasma apocalypse, right? Or the apocalypse itself. And I will say that even biblically speaking, in the book of Revelation and many other books that refer to Jesus's return, it is an apocalyptic event. I promise you that. Okay. There is death all over the place. Many people die at the coming of the Son of Man when he returns. Okay. It even talks about how Jesus is going to bring all kinds of angels with him in order to kill off all of the bad people and stuff. So it's an apocalyptic event for sure. All right. So just like in the days of Noah, now I'm just addressing all of you. Okay. In the days of Noah, according to the biblical story, all right, the world was bad. The world had become so corrupt that there was only a handful, a remnant of those who had a good vibe, a good energy signature, good people left in the world. And in the story, that was Noah and his immediate family, right? And so those people built the boat. This is where Noah's Ark comes into play, right? They built up this boat, and then the floodwaters came. And the reason that the floodwaters came was to cleanse the world. It was to baptize the world. It was to cover the world, to basically kill all of the evil that existed in the world in the form of life forms and the energetic signatures that existed and resonated within them, to get rid of them, right? To wipe it all clean, to wipe the slate clean. This is why we have the apocalypse itself. This is why we have an apocalyptic event. Wow, Jim Donovan. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Holy moly. Look at that. Oh, that's tight. Super effective. I like that. Thank you so much, Jim. All right. Let's get back here, over here. So just like in the days of Noah, all these people were distracted. Okay. They had lost their sense of what was right, or they had stopped being righteous. They had stopped doing rightly. They had stopped being good. And that's, different people will define good and bad in their own perspective. And in the world we live in today, be very careful, because I have found in my perspective, okay, according to my walk, that the world has flipped upside down. What used to be considered evil is today considered good. And what used to be considered good is today quickly becoming evil. Okay. So if you think, there's still a lot of good in the world and this and that, better run a self-diagnostic real quick. That's not my experience. All right. I see a lot of bad in the world. I don't want to focus on the bad. That's not what we do. Okay. We don't focus on the bad, but we should be wise to acknowledge that there is a flooding already of bad energy. Okay. Entropy, sinful times, if you're, a religious person or a Christian or whatever, right? Now, just like in the days of Noah, so it shall be in the coming apocalypse. Okay. Right before the apocalypse come, people will be distracted. They'll be evil. They'll be focused on themselves and all of their drama and caught up in all of their drama. People will be weird and backwards and upside down and messed up the world across. And there will only be a remnant of people left who will see it for what it really is, just like Noah and his family were. Now, what did Noah and his family do? Recognizing the signs and the omens of the time. They prepared. They started prepping. They were doomsday preppers, okay? They started building a boat. In the story, they started building a boat. Now this concept, there's many of these concepts when we look at, when you use comparative mythology in order to compare the hundreds, maybe even thousands of worldwide flood legends and myths, you start to see certain similarities across the board. Survivors building this boat and getting inside of this boat in order to survive is one of those things that we see similarities with. Now, let's compare this to the modern times once again. So, just before we come to the next apocalyptic cycle, which will not be a flood, it will be fire, okay? After the fire, okay, for those of you who survive, remember, you went through the fire times, and the oceans are now gone, so you'll be able to look around and see what times you live in because the oceans won't be there. So you know if the oceans are not there, that's the next one to come. So just remember that for when you do survive. All right, so basically it's going to surprise a lot of the evil people of the world. Hey, T-Baggins, what's up, man? Thanks for the $5. Super appreciate you. High five. All right, now let's go over to another one of my favorite verses in the Bible. I love all of the apocalyptic verses. Now, this is a book called Peter. This is the second book of Peter in the New Testament of the Bible, and I'm going to rephrase this first part, basically saying, hey, what's up, guys? Listen, this is my second time writing to all of you. I need to remind you of some things that are ancient, some ancient wisdom that were spoken of by wise people of the past. I'm saying this in my own language, okay? Now, please remember this, that at the end of days, just before the next apocalyptic cycle, trolls will come, like internet trolls, okay? As an example, okay? It says here scoffers. You see that word? Scoffers. Scoffers are people who just laugh at stuff. They don't believe in anything any longer except for themselves and their preferences, okay? Scoffers are people who have rejected ancient wisdom and the old ways. They laugh at them. They call them lies. They call them falsehoods. It says that scoffers will come in the last days, walking according to their own lusts, and saying, where's the promise of his coming? Or where's this apocalypse you keep talking about, huh? I don't see any apocalypse, right? It's just like I'm rephrasing and I'm sharing this in the modern perspective, okay? In the modern world, if we try to talk about cyclical apocalypses that happen, people in the modern world haven't experienced it. And because they themselves have not experienced an apocalyptic event, then they will deny it. They will say, oh, that's a fairy tale. That's an old wives' tale. That's a myth. There's no apocalypse. You can show them the thousands upon thousands of weighty volumes of evidence from our own history across cultures, across the world, and across time that make reference to various apocalyptic cycles, worldwide apocalyptic cycles, and they will scoff. They will laugh. They will reject that. They will laugh at you and make fun of you, or me. They have. I'm speaking from experience. And I've seen this happen to many other people too. They'll say, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, or since our ancestors died, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. What they fail to realize is the beginning of creation was since the last apocalyptic cycle. Okay, since the last apocalypse, we haven't had an apocalypse. Therefore, there's not going to be an apocalypse. That's retarded. I don't know how to say that in a more intelligent way. Okay, that's not very wise to look at it like that. For this, they willingly forget that by the word of God, the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, by which the world that then existed perished, being flooded. Pause real quick, okay? Let's go back to the most important part that applies to our modern day. They willingly forget. Not they accidentally forgot. They willingly forget. And I'm just gonna interpret that according to my own perspective and my own experience, okay? To willingly forget means that the earth, God, Mother Nature, whatever you believe in and see as being a higher power or whatever, will give us and is right now giving us so many omens and so many signs to remind us, especially as we get closer to the next apocalyptic cycle, of what has already happened in the past, including this video. This is a huge reminder to whoever's watching it. It will be so blatant and so obvious that the world has gone nuts and is upside down and things are changing, right? That it will echo and it will reflect everything that has already happened once before right before another apocalyptic cycle, right before a prior apocalyptic cycle. So they see all of these things and they reject them. They don't want to think about doom and gloom. They don't want to think about the world ending because I've got my cell phone. I can't live without my cell phone, or I've got a really nice job, you know, or whatever. They purposefully do not want to talk about this subject. They don't want to listen to it. They don't want to speak about it. They ignore anybody who is out there standing and proclaiming from the rooftops and from the mountaintops to whoever will listen, just like Noah and just like in the times of Noah, as the Bible verse, you know, that we read earlier says. And then it says here, but the heavens and the earth, which are now preserved by the same word, are reserved or waiting for fire until the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. What that means is the last apocalyptic cycle was a flood. The next apocalyptic cycle will be a fire, okay, which we've gone into many different details onto what that fire is, being the fire from the heavens, the cosmic fire that comes down in the form of serpents and sky worms and fireworms and snakes and stuff like that. Man, thanks a lot, Jim Donovan. That's awesome. So that will be the next one, okay? The fire is the one that you should expect to come next, not another flood, thankfully. Now, let's move over to 2 Timothy chapter 2, another one of my favorite books in the New Testament. It says, understand this, listen here. In the last days, that's the days that we live in now, according to the signs and the omens that have been shown to me. In the last days, there will come times of difficulty. Would you say that we live during difficult times? Would you say that we live during interesting times? I would. Times of difficulty will come just before the next apocalypse. For people will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness, but denying its power. Avoid such people. And then it goes on and on and on. But basically, this is another omen of the apocalypse, which we do cover also in every Tuesday, right? I believe is our omens segment, our brand new omens segment, where we talk about the signs to look for and the omens to read to know how close we are getting. Now, last one from the Bible. We've got the book of Revelation. This is chapter 21, verse 1. Now, this is a vision that was given to this prophet. He was able to look into the future and see what the world looks like post-apocalypse, after the return of Jesus, after the apocalypse, etc., right? And check out what he says. This is in reference to the flood waters being the oceans that we have now. Then I saw a new heaven, or you could say sky, and a new earth, terra, or the ground that we walk on. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. Now check this out. This is not in reference to like some magical vanishing of our entire planet or our whole realm, or you know, the whole world just disappearing and a new one reappearing or something like poof, you know. I'm not saying I'm not saying it isn't, okay? I'm saying it's not likely, basically. What is likely, especially because of this last verse, is it's saying that this is the exact earth that we live on now, the same terra, the same ground that we live on right now. Max Collins, boom, high five. He's talking in reference. He sees our future world, his same exact world that he lived in, but the earth had been changed. It had become new or renewed, okay? And the sky itself looked altogether different. There was a new sky in the post-apocalyptic world. And he says the sea was no more. That's the biggest clue to tell you that it's not some brand new earth altogether that's just like, you know, like everything just vanishes and we're like transported to some alternate earth somewhere else and it's all brand new or whatever, or this earth explodes or anything like that. The earth is not going anywhere. It will change what it looks like and its conditions inside of it, but it's not going to blow up or anything like that. It's going to remain steadfast. So is the sky, but they will change in their appearance and they will look renewed, altogether different. And that's how you know, because it says the sea was no more. The sea, being the sea that we have here on this land now, is gone. Right? Well, that verse right there, that last sentence would not matter if it was a whole altogether different place. Okay? It would just be like, and there was no sea there, in this new place. But instead it says the sea was no more, meaning he's standing in a world, his world, where once there was a sea, once there was an ocean, once there was a remnant of the flood waters that came, but now they're gone. Now they disappeared. Man, Jim Donovan, thank you everyone so much for your support. You guys are amazing. I super appreciate it. Hold on, I'm going to put some little hearts in that little, I don't know what that is in the chat, but I like how you can tap it and put hearts in little stuff. All right, cool. So hopefully that makes sense. Like I said, if you have any questions, I'm going to jump into the chat at the end for questions. Now, let's get out of the Bible and let's switch gears. And let's go over to some other myths and legends, histories about the Great Flood. Now this one right here, these are going to be, the first few of these are Native American. Okay, I'm a big fan of the Native American legends. I like the way that they tell the stories a lot more than many of the other tribes of the world. That's just because they resonate with me personally. Doesn't mean that the other ones are wrong. It doesn't mean that these ones are right. It just means that these are the ones that I enjoy their storytelling form. Okay, so these are the ones that I'll be sharing with you today. And there's hundreds of these. So we're not going to exhaust all of them today by any means. Okay, we're going to cover a handful of these. Now, this one is called the serpent. Wait, which tribe is this? Let me see. Ojibwe. Is that how you say that? Ojibwe. Yes, I think it's Ojibwe. All right, so this is the Ojibwe tribe, and it's called the Great Serpent and the Great Flood. Now, let's check this out. One day, when Nanabozo returned to his lodge after a long journey, he missed his young cousin who lived with him. He called his cousin's name, but he heard no answer. Looking around on the sand for tracks, Nanabozo was, I don't know if it's Nanabozo, was startled by the trail of the Great Serpent. He then knew that his cousin had been seized by his enemy. Nanabozo picked up his bow and his arrows and followed the track of the serpent. He passed. Now, let me time out real quick. I want to throw in my own little 2 cents here. Oftentimes, when they're talking about a serpent symbolism is usually in reference to plasma. Okay, in the old world, when they saw the serpents coming down from the sky, when they needed to rid the land of serpents, etc., oftentimes they're not talking about physical snakes. You might have seen that commercial, Southern Belle Rising. I just saw that. Thank you so much. Super appreciate you, Southern Belle. Now, listen, you may have seen that commercial on YouTube that, they play ads and stuff like that, where the guy says, the thing about the serpent, and he's trying to be funny. He's trying to tell jokes, which I like. But he's starting to say, like, the thing about the serpent is, like, why does God curse the serpent to crawl on its belly when that's what it does? That's a good question. It's told to you as a joke. But the reality is, I would like to answer that. The reason is because serpents did not originally crawl on their bellies. They flew. Because they were not snakes, okay? Serpent and snake are two way different things, okay? Serpents originally was plasma, like undulating in the sky like a worm or like, whatever. I don't know what else to call it. It's like a snake in the sky, basically. It's like a dragon, basically, okay? And dragons originally didn't have arms and legs and, noses and stuff like that. They were worms. They were just lines, squiggly lines up in the sky. And people knew that they were able to set fire to things. All right, so the serpent symbolism is what you see right behind me, that plasma streak coming down. And because it's so gigantic and so far away, at first, you will see it just moving in slow motion, just like a Titan would look like it's walking in slow motion if it was right next to you, right? We experience time a lot quicker being so much smaller, just like dogs experience time way faster and they see us moving in slow motion. It's the same thing when we look up and see cosmic serpents slowly undulating in the sky, okay? Same exact thing. That's the serpent symbolism, and especially when they call it a great serpent. All right, so Nanabozo, he's looking for his cousin. He picked up his bow and his arrow, and he followed the track of the serpent. He passed the great river, climbed mountains, and crossed over valleys until he came to the shores of a deep and gloomy lake. Time out. When they start describing where a person went, okay, in these ancient stories, and they start giving you all these details, it reminds me, I want to share something with you. You can learn a lot from this, right? We talk often about where to find the safe place from the apocalypse, where to find Yggdrasil, or where to find Hodmimi's Holt, or where to find the Garden of Eden, or Hyperborea, right? Or the Fountain of Youth. We are given instructions just like this, time and time and time and time again. You don't need an actual physical map, although it will help. And there are actual physical maps that I show you all the time. Matter of fact, here's one right here. Fapow, right? I'm going to make reference to this as I read this story to you. All right, this is Mercator's Arctic map. Where was I? Let's go back. Now, this reminds me, not that. Ojibwe, there we go. Now, let me read this again. I want you to think about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Okay, at the very beginning, when he's talking to, the museum owner or whatever, and he's like, hey, I want you to help us to find the Holy Grail or whatever, which is the same exact thing we're talking about right now. This is the same story as that movie, okay? It's all a never-ending story. It's all part of the same exact story. In the movie, he tells Indiana Jones, yeah, we don't exactly have a map, but we do have these ancient writings that talk about canyons and rivers and valleys. And Indiana Jones is like, it's pretty vague, like, where are you going to look? You have to be a researcher. You have to find the clues. The clues are hidden like little breadcrumbs that lead us home. Just like that story of Hansel and Gretel. It's the exact same thing, right? So let's reread it, okay? Now, Nanabozo picked up his bow and his arrows, and he followed the track of the serpent. Jim Donovan, thank you. Man, you're awesome. He followed the track of the serpent. He passed. These are your clues. You could draw a map right now. He passed the great river. Now, ask yourself, which river in the world is the great river? Okay? These are huge clues. He passed the great river, climbed mountains, right? Not walked over the mountains, climbed the mountains, and crossed over valleys. Now there's a valley. So let me just go back to this map again real quick. Okay, Great River Euphrates, Fopow, right up here, right there. There's the Euphrates, whoosh, right? There is a great valley. See how it's a mountainous valley? Huge mountains. These mountains right here, just straight up out of the ground, just like Rupus Nigra right there in the middle. All right, let's go back to our story. Pardon me. All right, let's see. He picked up his bow. He passed the great river, climbed the mountains, crossed over valleys until he came to the shores of a deep and gloomy lake. Let's go back and see if we can find a lake right there in the middle. It's like all right there. It's all right there. I love this map so much. All right, hold on. It's like, it's so easy, like sometimes. I don't know how else to say it. I'm not bragging or nothing. I'm just saying, this is how it's designed, okay? The secrets of the world are designed so that children should be able to understand them, okay? That's why adults have such a hard time. All right, let's go back to our story. All right, now, he gets to this deep and gloomy lake. It is now called Manitou Lake, which is interesting because I have that city, Manitou, in my own little city. Spirit Lake. Ooh, Spirit Lake. So a lake charged with electrical energy, electromagnetic energy, which is what spirits are, according to my perspective, right? In my research. And also, I should just say that at the beginning of every video. And also, the Lake of Devils, okay? So, devils are like, evil spirits, influencing spirits, geniuses, etc. The trail of the great serpent led to the edge of the water. Interesting. I wonder what happens to Nanabozo. Nanabozo could see that at the bottom of the lake, the house of the great serpent. Okay, so at the bottom of this gloomy lake, this spirit lake, at the bottom was the house of the great serpent, a container that held a great serpent, okay? It was filled with evil spirits who were his servants and his companions. Their forms were monstrous and terrible. Most of them, like their master, resembled spirits. Oh, okay. Interesting. So all these little snake offspring or whatever resembled spirits or electromagnetics, just like right behind me there. In the center of this horrible group was the great serpent himself. In the center was the great serpent, coiling his terrifying length around the cousin of Nanabozo. The head of the serpent was red as blood. His fierce eyes glowed like fire. His entire body was armed with hard and glistening scales of every color
and shade. Harkens back to the rainbow serpent out in Australia and New Zealand. Looking down on these twisting spirits of evil, Nanabozo made up his mind that he would get revenge on them for the death of his cousin. Now, I want you to stop and just remind. I just want to remind all of us. We are reading a cartoonified actual history. Okay? This is the telephone game that has been passed down century after century. Okay? Thankfully, we have enough clues to figure out what the reality is. Now, he said to the clouds, disappear. And the clouds went out of sight. And he said to the winds, winds, be still at once. And the winds became still. Now, time out again. I want to make reference back to the book of Revelation. Okay? Right before the apocalypse. Okay? In the book of Revelation, as it's describing apocalyptic events, it says there was silence in the heavens for about a half an hour. No wind. No clouds. No clouds means heat. Means increased pressure. Like when you have a hot day, there's way more pressure in that area, and it's way, there's less pressure and it's more hot. Keep that in mind. He said, winds, be still at once, and the winds became still. When the air over the lake of the evil spirits had become stagnant, Nanabozo said to the sun, shine over the lake with all of the fierceness that you can. Make the water boil. So, now we have the sun, right? Right above a lake with extreme heat. Some of you know what I'm making reference to right now, right? Because I've done many videos in my Plasma Apocalypse playlist about this exact same thing. It's the blue star Kachina. It's when the sun intensifies and becomes more fierce, and the daylight becomes more focused and smaller, so that it actually starts burning things as it makes its way to the North Pole. That's why I'm laughing, because it makes complete sense to me. All right. So he talks to the sun. So there was silence in the heavens, okay, as the winds stopped, or the zephyr that comes up out of the earth that helps to make those winds as well stops. Okay, there's a calm before the world storm. Shine over the lake with all of the fierceness that you can, and make the water boil. The oceans will boil. That is another apocalyptic omen of things that people will witness. Now, there's many references to the oceans boiling and bubbling up. Let's check out what happens to Nanabozo. In these ways, thought Nanabozo, he would force the great serpent to seek the cool shade of the trees growing on the shores of the lake. So there's like a forest area on the shores of this lake. Interesting. There, he would seize the enemy and get revenge. After giving his orders, Nanabozo took his bow and his arrows and placed himself near the spot where he thought the serpents would come to enjoy the shade. And then he changed himself into the broken stump of a withered tree. Uno momento. Let's just zoom all the way in now. This is so fun. This right here, okay, this is the broken stump of the world tree. It's also known as the split rock, the split mountain, etc. It is the stump. This is Hodmimis Holt. It is the stump of Yggdrasil. Okay, this is where Leif Brazir, Adam and Eve of the apocalypse, basically. This is where they go, and inside of this volcanic mountain, this plasma volcano. They go inside of it, they find refuge. This is also the emergence place of many tribes, as well as the blue beam of ionized oxygen that shoots up and fills the sky with oxygen for quite some time, for an age, or for an aud. All right, back to our story. So he changes himself into the broken stump of a withered tree for some reason. The winds became still, the air stagnant, and the sun shot hot rays from a cloudless sky. In time, the water of the lake became troubled, and bubbles rose to the surface. William Cooper, reincarnated. Hey, thank you. Appreciate you. So now, time out real quick. So we've got this hot sun. causing this lake that has a broken stump of a tree right in the middle of it, and electrical serpents all the way around it, causing the lake to bubble, right? So this harkens back, I didn't pull up a picture of it, but it harkens back to the Hindu story of the churning of the ocean. So whenever you aerate water, or whenever you have lots of tiny little bubbles that come up out of the water turns white, turns into what looks like milk. So the churning of the ocean of milk. Wow, Jim Donovan again. Thank you so much, Jim. Are you guys saying it? Oh, wow. I like your little super chat stuff. Your little stickers and stuff. Wow, all of them are really cool. William Cooper says, new subscriber. I love your content. Thank you. I appreciate you. All right, cool. Let me get back to the story. We're going to wrap up the Ojibwe story. So, he's looking for his cousin. His cousin is pulled to the bottom of this lake, right? Where there's all these evil electrical serpent type beings or whatnot. There's a great serpent down there. There's a trunk of a tree right in the middle of that lake. The sun stops right above this lake and starts to boil it, and the sun becomes super hot. The rays of the sun had penetrated to the home of the serpents as the water bubbled and foamed. Okay? A serpent lifted his head above the center of the lake and gazed around the shores. Soon another serpent came to the surface. So there's more than one blue beam, by the way. There's more than one beam that shoots up out of the earth. And I will tell you this. Initially, they might not be blue. Blue is the good color of this energy that comes up. But, as it says in the Bible, the God of this world, right now, or this age, is not that blue beam. It's the red energy, the red spectrum, okay? Keep that in mind. All right, so this other serpent gazes around. Another serpent came to the surface. Both listened for the footsteps of Nanabozo, but they heard him nowhere. Nanabozo is sleeping, they said to one another, and then they plunged beneath the waters, which seemed to hiss as they closed over the evil spirits. Not long after, the lake became more troubled. Its water boiled from its very depths, and the hot waves dashed wildly against the rocks on its banks. Also, please keep in mind that the earth has many pockets, huge pockets of gases that it will also release during this apocalyptic time, as there are worldwide earthquakes and tremblings and the world opens up and cracks open and stuff. All these gases are going to be released. Those gases, if ionized by electrical serpents, okay, become plasma, or they can be set on fire by a strong enough heat source. Now, the hot waves dashed wildly against the rocks on its banks. Soon the great serpent came slowly to the surface of the hot water and moved toward the shore. His blood-red crest glowed. The reflection from his scales was blinding as the glitter of a sleet-covered forest beneath the winter sun. He was followed by all the evil spirits. So great was their number that they soon covered the shores of the lake. Now, when they saw the broken stump of the withered tree, they suspected that it might be one of the disguises of Nanabozo. They knew his cunning. One of the serpents approached the stump, wound his tail around it, and tried to drag it down into the lake. This is also the exact same story as the churning of the ocean of milk, okay? The two different gods, the positive and the negative, which are the anode and the cathode on either side of Mount Meru. They use a snake. They use an actual serpent, and they like tug on it, have this little tug of war in order to turn the ocean. Now, Nanabozo could hardly keep from crying aloud, for the tail of the monster prickled his sides. Oops. But he stood firm and was silent. The evil spirits moved on. The great serpent glided into the forest and wound his many coils around the trees. His companions also found shade. All but one. One remained near the shore to listen to the footsteps of Nanabozo, and from the stump, Nanabozo watched until all of the serpents were asleep, and their guard was intently looking in another direction. And then he silently drew an arrow. You're going to see that symbolism a lot as well. There's always a mystical arrow, magical arrow, holy arrow, special arrow, etc. It's always one. It's an arrow that does not miss its target. he silently drew his arrow from his quiver and placed it onto his bow and aimed it at the heart of the great serpent. It reached its mark. With a howl that shook the mountains and startled the wild beasts in their cave, the monster awoke. It sounds like it's a Yui from the other legend that we had done a video about. So I want to talk about this howl as well. Okay, when the atmosphere depressurizes, there will be a howl. Okay, like the earth will sing, it will resonate. It's going to create a very loud noise, just like a tea kettle going off, but on a macrocosmic scale. There will be very loud winds and noises right after this total silence. Okay, extremely loud noises. Let's see. The monster awoke, followed by its terrible companions, which also were howling with rage and terror. The great serpent plunged into the water. At the bottom of the lake, there still lay the body of Nanabozo's cousin. In their fury, the serpents tore it into 1,000 pieces. His shredded lungs rose to the surface and covered the lake with whiteness. His lungs rose to the surface and covered the lake with whiteness. That's so interesting because we've talked about various legends that make reference to a place in the Arctic Ocean that was referred to as the lung of the world or something. I can't remember exactly what the description was, but it was a place where the water became so thick that boats couldn't sail through it, but it was liquid enough so that you couldn't walk on it, right? People got stuck in it, and they called that like the lung of the ocean or something like that. And whiteness, just like we talked about, whenever the bubbles come up through the water, it turns the water white. All right. The great serpent soon knew that he would die from his wound, but he and his companions were determined to destroy Nanabozo. They caused the water of the lake to swell upward and to pound against the shore with the sound of many thunders. Interesting. That's exactly how the voice of God is described in the Bible. Many thunders, right? This is electricity. This is all of the stuff that you hear reverberating in our atmosphere. It really is many thunders. Madly, the flood rolled over the land, over the tracks of Nanabozo, carrying with it rocks and trees. High on the crest of the highest wave floated the wounded great serpent. So now we have like this sort of image in our minds of these waves that don't crash, that lift up and up and up and up, just like the Red Sea's parting. His eyes glared around him, and his hot breath mingled with the hot breath of his many companions. Nanabozo, fleeing before the angry waters, thought of his Indian children. He ran through their villages, shouting, "Run to the mountain tops! The great serpent is angry and is flooding the earth. Run! Run!" This is the exact advice that Jesus gives to his disciples. When you see these things coming, when you see these things happening, flee to the mountains. The people caught up their children and found safety on the mountains. Nanabozo continued his flight along the base of the western hills and then up a high mountain beyond Lake Superior, far to the north. Just a reminder. All right. Back to our story. Far to the north. There he found many men and animals that had escaped from the flood that was already covering the valleys and the plains and even the highest hills. Now, this also harkens back to Noah's flood. Obviously, all of the animals started coming to the ark that was created by Noah and his family, right? The animals are called. It's a frequency that is put out, right? The animals follow the frequency of the world. Many of them do, not all of them do, right? But they are able to migrate. They're able to follow certain paths, and this is how they know where to go because they're following a frequency. And this frequency will become amplified right before the apocalypse itself so that everybody can tune into it, right? Not everybody does tune into it, but if you do, you'll be able to migrate. You'll be able to just follow your senses and you'll be led to safety, just like the animals will be. Still, the waters continued to rise. Soon, all the mountains were under the flood except for the high one, like a high and lofty mountain, on which stood Nanabozo. So who do you think Nanabozo represents? There he gathered together timber and he made a raft. This is another reference to the boat, right? Somebody's making a boat or whatever that they used in order to survive the floodwaters. Now, I want to talk about the boat thing real quick, okay? So it is my belief, based on my studies and stuff, that the word boat is very close to and probably related to the word container, right? Which is also where we get things like a daughter or a female in older languages. It's like bat or bath. A bath is a container also, right? It holds water. So a bath or a bat or a bot or a boat, etc., does not have to be something that's made out of wood and floats on the water. It can be this right here at the middle, a container, okay, that is also on the water, right there in the middle of the world. All right, just wanted to point that out. Now, he gathered together timber and he made a raft. Upon it, the men and the women and the animals with him placed themselves. Almost immediately, the mountaintop disappeared from their view, and they floated along the face of the waters. For many days they floated. At long last, the flood began to subside. Soon the people on the raft saw the trees on the tops of the mountains. Then they saw the mountains and the hills and the plains and the valleys. When the water disappeared from the land, the people who survived learned that the great serpent was dead, and that his companions had returned to the bottom of the lake of spirits. There they remain to this day. For fear of Nanabozo, they have never dared to come forth again. Wasn't that a great story? Let's check out another one, shall we? Hey, let me say thanks again for all of the support. You guys in the chat, really, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Let's see. Where's my little YouTube deal? Here it is. Oh, wow. So we got Jim Donovan, and here's Jim Donovan, boom, and Max Collins, who says, happy to support research and dedication, Pebbles in the Pond. Right on. Thank you, all of you, so very much. I hope you guys are having a blast in the chat. Welcome to all, what is it, 500 people? I'm kind of getting lost here in my screens, but welcome to everybody. Yes, 546 people right now. Welcome. All right, let's move over to another Native American legend about the flood. We've got the Nistenau, or Kanistenau, however you want to pronounce it. Nistenau. The Nistenau flood myth. All right, now, many centuries ago, a great flood covered the earth, destroying all nations. At that time, all of the tribes of the Choctaw des Prairies climbed up the Choctaw, a ridge emerging out of the prairie. Also, prairie is sort of akin to a valley, right? In order to escape the rising waters. After the tribes had gathered, the water rose to cover them all, turning their bodies into a mass of red pipestone rock. This is another similarity you'll see when you study and you use the tool of comparative mythology during these apocalyptic cycles, and especially during these flood myths and legends, right? You have these beings that were petrified. Beings, human beings, giants, and human-like humanoid creatures, okay, titans, giants, humans, etc., even down to the smallest pygmies and animals and things like that, that have been petrified, getting too close to these serpents and suffering their strong electrical charges. Now, from that day on, the Choctaw has been considered neutral ground to all of the tribes, and there they could meet in safety to smoke the peace pipe. While the people were all drowning, a young virgin named Kewaptau grabbed the foot of a very large bird who was flying over the Choctaw. The bird carried her up to a high cliff. Time out real quick. The bird is the thunderbird. The bird is the phoenix. The bird is the plasma that shoots up out of Mount Meru and then spreads out its wings in the form of an aurora. So, grabs onto the foot of this huge skybird. Now, The bird carried her up to a high cliff. That's how Mount Meru is always described. This is how Rupas Nigra is always described, okay? These holy mountains like Olympus and stuff, they're always huge, high, lofty cliffs. These are towers. They're not just a mountain range that you can just hike up or anything. You have to rock climb if you want to get to the top of this particular cliff, okay? Or the legends speak of other entrances, okay? They're secret entrances that you have to find, just like in the Lord of the Rings, okay? You can go the hard way, which is up the freaking, what do they call that in The Princess Bride? The Cliffs of Insanity. You can do that, okay? But that's the hard way. Keep that in mind. But it's probably faster than, going around it for days and days trying to find the secret passages and caves systems and stuff. All right, so the bird carried her up to a high cliff, safely above the floodwaters. Here, the girl had twins, fathered by the war eagle. So we have another reference to this sort of sky bird, okay, this war eagle or whatever, which is plasma that shoots up and spreads its wings or whatever. And there's twins. There's always twins. The war eagle would be in the middle. The twins would be on either side, being a male and a female. Almost every single time, because it's an anode and a cathode electrical arc, or the Ark of the Covenant, etc. Right? That's the feet of this phoenix or bird, or however you want to see it. And from those twins, the world was repopulated from the positive and the negative energy, right? That is running through the muddied waters of the ocean at the top of the world, creates life. That's another story. Interesting one too. All right, let's go over to one of my favorite tribes, the Hopi. And let's turn on dark mode. Thank you very much. All right, cool. Now we're going to talk about the Hopi entrance into the fourth world. There's a lot of information on the Hopi. We're just going to focus on the flood myth right now. Let me go ahead and make this a bit bigger too. Let's see here. All right, cool. So we're going to talk about the entrance into the fourth world. Two main versions exist. There's other versions, but two main ones exist as to the Hopi's emergence into the present fourth world. So according to the Hopi, this present world that we live in is the fourth. So after you've survived this next apocalyptic cycle, you'll be in the fifth, right? In one version, after evil broke out amongst the people, just like in the days of Noah, just like in the days of today. In the third world, with the help of the spider grandmother. Now, the spider grandmother is the spider legs, just like a spider looks like, how it branches out, or a hydra, or any type of a creature like a jellyfish or an octopus. These are all symbolic cartoonifications of plasma that branches down, just like this little figure right here. Mesa Melt, hey, welcome to the Good Vibe Tribe. Good to see you. All right, so the world had been completely evil in the third world. So with the help of spider grandmother, or bird spirits, a hollow bamboo reed. Another word for reed would be a column, a pole, stuff like that, right? It's talking about the blue beam or blue bird, right? A hollow bamboo reed grew at the opening of the third world into the fourth world, just like we referenced earlier on this earlier map. You have to imagine this is Mount Meru, and a beam of light, a blue beam of light, shoots up and spreads out as it reaches up towards the top of the world. All right, so a hollow bamboo reed grew at the opening of the third world into the fourth world. This opening, or sipapu, is traditionally viewed to be the Grand Canyon, right? Because it's an opening in the world, right? I'm sure that there is light that does emerge out of the Grand Canyon, and I'm sure that the ancient Hopi and other tribes saw that light that came up out of the Grand Canyon, just like many other lights will erupt out of various other openings in the world, and maybe they thought that that was the place of emergence instead of a place of emergence, right? So they ended up settling in those areas. This opening, or sipapu, is traditionally viewed to be the Grand Canyon. According to some guy, Barry Pritzker, the people with good hearts, or kindness, good vibes, made it into the fourth world. So, if people ask me, like, what can I do to survive? Be a good person first and foremost, okay? Like, I feel like the religions, the ancient myths, the legends, all of this give pretty strong hints that, like, if you want to survive, the apocalypse is here in order to cleanse the world of evil. So it's really good idea to be good, okay? All right, anyways. The other version, mainly told in Ojibwe. Hold on. I gotta make this a bit smaller so I can read it here. All right, the other version, mainly told in Ojibwe, has it that Tawa destroyed the third world in a great flood. Before the destruction, Spider Grandmother sealed the more righteous people into hollow reeds, which were used as boats. Once again, containers. Bot, right? Boat. Bot. On arrival on a small piece of dry land, the people saw nothing around them but more water. Even after planting large bamboo shoots, climbing to the top and looking about, Spider-Woman, this is not a comic book. This is real history. Okay, this is what your comic books are based off of, which is why I do my whole segment called Truth in Movies. Spider-Woman then told the people to make boats out of more reeds and using island stepping stones along the way. The people sailed east until they arrived on the mountainous coasts of the fourth world. Mountainous coast of the fourth world, right? While it may not be possible to positively ascertain which is the original, more correct story, blah, 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 blah. Let's see. Oh, they're both correct. That's my opinion on that. Let's see. Okay, that's pretty much all I wanted to read about the Hopi in reference to the Great Flood. Next up, we've got... Let's take off dark mode. Sometimes dark mode actually makes it light. It's weird. The Choctaw. All right, sweet. So just check out the Choctaw flood myth. Now, where is it? All right. This is the Choctaw flood myth. Our people have always had a tradition of the deluge. The deluge is just another fancy way of saying worldwide flood. Our people have always had a tradition of the deluge, which happened in this way. There was total darkness for a great time over the whole earth. The Choctaw doctors, or mystery men, looked out for daylight for a long time until at last they despaired of ever seeing it. So they never thought they were going to see sunlight ever again, that they would just live in perpetual and eternal darkness. Until, at last, they despaired of ever seeing it again, and the whole nation was very unhappy. This is a similar sentiment that is shared across many Native American tribes, that there was this darkness that brought about depression and sadness, right? They weren't sure it was ever going to lift. At last, a light was discovered in the north. Right? This is great. I love it. A light was discovered in the north. There was a light in the north. And there was great rejoicing. Until it was found to be great mountains of water rolling on, which destroyed them all, except for a few families who had expected it, and built a great raft on which they were saved. Once again, the great raft symbolism. All right, I'm going to take down some of these... what do we got here on this next one? I think this is the last Native American story. I'm going to go over here. The Cree. All right, so Cree are up next. Let me get rid of some of these other pages so it's easier on my computer. All right, boom. So this is the Cree. The Cree are another Native American tribe. This is the Cree flood myth. I'm going to try to pronounce this to myself. Wizagatsak. Wizagatsak. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. All right. Wizagatsak, the trickster. Oh, my God. So almost any time that they are talking about a trickster, it's usually that blue beam light that comes up, okay? Because some people see it as being benevolent and good and imparting good qualities to mankind and nature around it and stuff, but it does other things too. So it's, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. They're not sure. It all depends on your perspective and your experience with it. All right, so Wizagatsak, the trickster, built a dam across a stream in the attempt to capture the great beaver as it left its lodge. He waited all day until finally, at dusk, the huge creature swam towards him. Now, the great beaver, which we're not talking about a physical, actual animal, okay? Could be, but most likely the great beaver is like talking about a comic book superhero. You might as well say it's the same thing, right? It represents a truth. The great beaver possesses powerful magic, and as Wizagatsak prepared to spear it, there's another one, the arrow, the spear, right? These are the types of weapons that they usually carry. It's usually a beam, a pole of some type. Created a spell that caused a muskrat to bite Wizagatsak in the behind, making him miss the target. Though spared, the great beaver was angry and wanted revenge. The next morning, Wizagatsak was dumbfounded. After being bitten, he had dismantled his dam. Sage, thank you for the memberships in the chat. After being bitten, he had dismantled his dam, but the water level had not gone down, even though the stream was now flowing freely through the spot where the dam had been. Even more strange, the water level continued to rise higher and higher. The great beaver had worked powerful magic indeed. The entire world was flooding. For 2 weeks, the great beaver and the little beavers kept busy making all of the waters of the earth to rise until not one spot of dry land could be found. In great haste, Wizagatsak built a raft of logs and took many animals aboard with him. This is the animals listening to the song of the world and being called, right? The water continued to rise for yet another 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, the muskrat left the raft to search for land, but even the muskrat, who is accustomed to living between the earth and the water, drowned. Then a raven. This is very interesting. The raven shows up quite often. Then a raven left the raft, and he flew around the entire world, but found no land, only water. Then Wizagatsak made his own magic with the help of a wolf on his raft. Similar animal symbolism across the board, right? During the next 2 weeks, the wolf represents Mount Meru, just so you know. It's a split mountain. That's how it looks when it's pointing up and it's split. It looks like a wolf howling up at the moon, basically. During the next 2 weeks on the raft, moss grew all over its surface. The wolf ran around and around on the raft, causing the moss to become magically expanding earth, until the raft was a vast landmass. However, to this very day, water springs up through the holes in the ground, cracks in that original raft. And that was the Cree story of the flood myth. Now, if people tell you, that there was no flood because, it's just one or two stories or whatever, let's take a look at this. This is just I think it's Wikipedia article, right? It says list of flood myths. And this is not even a comprehensive list of flood myths. This is just a small list of flood myths, right? The flood happened. The flood is still here. It is the oceans around us. Actually, I should say the ocean. There is only one, just like we talked about in the video, okay? We might label them locally, like, oh, this is our part of the ocean, so we'll call it the Pacific. Well, this is ours, so we'll call it the Atlantic. You know what I mean? But all in all, it's one great, grand, humongous floodwaters that are still here. And one day, those floodwaters will disappear, just like we heard in that prophecy. So let's just check out some of these, right? It says here, let's see what it says. Flood myths are common. Okay, that should tell you something right there. They're common, which means this happened. All right, but I don't like that it uses the word myth. It should say flood histories. That's more of a solid word, okay? There's a reason why these flood myths are common, okay? It's not because they're retarded and they're trying to just make up stories and lies about where the ocean came from. No, they're telling you exactly where the ocean came from. Flood myths are common across a wide range of cultures, extending back into the Bronze Age and Neolithic prehistory. That means this is one of the oldest stories ever. Okay? This is the oldest history story. This should be, if you go to history in high school or junior high school or whatever academics, this should be one of the first things that they teach, because this is one of the first stories ever told. This story is included in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is one of the old, if not the oldest story that's ever been found in modern history. These accounts depict a flood, sometimes global in scale. It's always global. Even if it sounds like it's a local flood, okay? It's global, okay? We're talking about a global flood. Usually sent by a deity because it comes from the sky and the ground. So the gods themselves or deities to destroy civilization as an act of divine retribution. Why? Because right before each apocalyptic cycle, if you research all the times that the sun caught the world on fire or that the world burned by fire, I guarantee you it's also a form of divine retribution, which means it's a form of cleansing the world of evil, which it's a byproduct, really. It's a shift in energy, okay? That's all it is. It's a shift in energy, okay? You can look at it like God is trying to, like, get rid of all the bad people and stuff. That's one way of looking at it, and that's equally true, but it's also just an energetic shift. It's just it's a electromagnetic polarity reversal is what the technical term for that is. All right, so in Africa, the Kwaya, the Mbuti, the Maasai, the Manding, the Yoruba peoples all have flood legends. Egypt has their own flood legends involving Ra and his daughter Sekhmet. We're just going to kind of skip through these so that we can wrap up the video here, but I just want to give you some example. All of these various Native American tribes, the Algonquin peoples, the Anishinaabe, the Choctaw, the Kamoks, the Cree, many different types of legends throughout these communities. The Hopi, the Inuit, aka Eskimos, the Menominee, the Mi'kmaq, the Nipmuc, the Nisqually, the Ojibwe, which we talked about one of theirs, right? They have actually 3 different ones listed here. The Orowignarak, the Ottawa, all of these Native Americans. Mesoamerican tribes, the Aztec, the Maya. In the Popol Vuh, it talks about Huracan, which is sort of like the name for the world storm, which is where we get hurricane from, right? South America, Canary, Inca, the Mapuche, the Muisca, the Tupi. In Asia, all across Asia, they have flood legends. In the ancient Near East, Mesopotamian, the Sumerian creation myth. It says the flood narrative was written during the Old Babylonian period and added into existing texts such as the Sumerian Kings List. I would say it's even older than that because there's not just one time that the world flooded, but many. We just remember the last time the most. The Atrahasis, the Gilgamesh flood myth, which we made a reference to, right? In the Epic of Gilgamesh, I don't know if you read it, but Gilgamesh goes on this quest for eternal life, basically, because he's part god. He's like a demigod, and he ends up meeting Humbaba, which is like this monster humanoid type guy. They become buddies. They go on this quest together to try to find eternal life or figure out how to live forever. They end up going inside of the earth, down into the bowels of the earth in order to find Noah, which is Utnapishtim, I believe, or his name is just different, right? And they talk about how to live forever and how about the floodwaters and the earth flooding and stuff. In Abrahamic religions, obviously, there's the Genesis flood narrative, which we've talked about. The Gnostic texts also refer to hypostasis of the archons, the secret book of John, Noah's Ark, the Islamic view of Noah as well. Yu the Great in Chinese mythology, Nuwa and the Great Flood in China. Iran mentions Ahura Mazda, which is where you get the 2 car companies, by the way, Acura and Mazda. So in Iran, it mentions Ahura Mazda that warns Yima that there will come a harsh winter storm followed by melted snow. Ahura Mazda advises. Now that's called the Great Winter. Okay, so on the TV show, they're like, winter is coming. That's because they already live in the time of magic. Okay, we don't. We live in a time when the Earth's energy is charging. We don't live in a time of magic. We live in a time of technology. Okay, but when you live in a time of magic, that's also how you know the next apocalyptic cycle is by water. All right, so you will go through what is known as Fimbulvinter or Fimbulvetter or the Great Winter. So, this is Ahura Mazda warns Yima that there will come a harsh winter storm followed by melted snow. Ahura Mazda advises Yima to construct a vara, or in Avestan, it's an enclosure. a boat, or a bot, or a box, however you want to say it. This he is to populate with the fittest of men and women. So survival of the fittest. You want to have good energy, a good body, treat your body right, etc. Good vibes, good frequency, and 2 of every animal, just like in the Noah legend. Even though Noah actually had more than just 2 of every animal, he had like 7 of many of the unclean animals. And that might have been, you know, to feed the other ones, or for they themselves to eat, or to use to procreate for food and stuff like that. Bird and plant, and supply with food and water. Also, I don't know if they ate the animals, okay? I imagine if there's telepathy, not a lot of people are going to want to eat animals, but that's just my personal thing. So anyways, that's the same story. India, Manu and Matsya. The legend first appears in the Shatapatha Brahmana. Shatapatha Brahmana. And is further detailed in the Matsya Purana. Matsya, the incarnation of Lord Vishnu. When you hear about Lord Vishnu, Max Collins, thank you so much. I super appreciate you, man. Thank you for your support. All right, so when you hear about Lord Vishnu and his various incarnations, right? Vishnu is portrayed as a blue god, or the blue beam itself, right? Vishnu has an arrow, just like a holy arrow, just like we've talked about, etc. And he's portrayed as different cartoonified versions of a blue beam that shoots up out of the waters, or is born out of the Mar, or the Mari, or Mary, right? The Virgin of the earth, shoots up out of the waters and touches the moon, or this crescent, or a bull's horns, etc. So he forewarns Manu, or Mon, or moon, right? Moon, the word moon means realm. It means world. So that's where that comes from. And that's also where we get man, right? Man comes from another world. A human, about impending catastrophic floods, and orders him to collect all of the grains of the world in a boat. In some forms of the story, all living creatures are also preserved in the boat. When the flood destroys the world, Manu, in some versions accompanied by the 7 great sages, survives by boarding the ark, which Matsya pulls to safety. You see this part right here? 7 great sages? That's key. That's Noah and his family. That's the 7 sages, or the 7 lights, okay? The 7 mountains. They're portrayed and depicted in many alchemical ancient drawings that also reference, the same things that we're talking about as far as the tree of life and the fountain of youth and things like that. They are referenced also in ancient maps when you see the northern ocean areas that are named Septentrio, which means 7 trees, basically. Okay, it doesn't mean 7-3 like trio. It means 7 deru, or 7 trees, or the 7 trees of life, the 7 beams of energy. Okay, there's these 7 mountains or witnesses that surround the throne of God, which is Rupus Nigra, which is the great blue beam, Vishnu, etc. Okay, so there's always these 7 churches, 7 angels, 7 this and that you will see, because there are plasma volcanoes that are around the great one, the huge towering one that we talked about. There are lesser ones off to the sides that surround it, and there are 7 of them. Okay, could be the anode and the cathode on the outsides, and maybe like 4 in the middle. And I don't know. I'm still kind of putting together like where they are exactly in their location, but I know that there are 7 other plasma volcanoes that shoot out their own smaller lights up into the sky, right? And how it looks to us will depend on your location in the world and your perspective as you're looking towards the north. So keep that in mind. That's the 7 symbolism that you'll see time and time again. We got Puluga, the creator god, and the religion of the indigenous. Religion of the indigenous. I like that. Of the religion of the indigenous inhabitants of the Andaman Islands, sends a devastating flood to punish people who have forgotten his commands. Once again, degradation of society. Only 4 people survived this flood, 2 men and 2 women. That's another thing too, is you'll see it's always twins, right? There's always, like in that movie, they call it the Law of 4. What was that movie that we broke down? Leonardo DiCaprio, and he's stuck on that island of psychotic crazy people or whatever. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. Indonesia, they have their own flood myths. Japan is the only exception. This is very interesting. Japan is the only country in the entire world that does not have a worldwide flood myth or legend. So sometimes in the old world, some of the Japanese prided themselves on that, and they thought that they meant that they were spared because they were the best, or Japan was the center of the world, and therefore they didn't flood because they knew that the center of the world was the one place that did not. So Japan, ancient Japan, their lore is that they survived the flood because they did not flood. So therefore they don't have a flood myth, right? Could be. I don't think so. It sounds nice, but I feel like maybe that's because people settled in Japan after the floodwaters receded. That's just my theory that I have on that. All right, Korea. Korea has their own versions of the flood myth. Malaysia, the Philippines. The Philippines one is pretty interesting. I'm not going to go over that one right now. We got the Igorot. Oh, it starts off once upon a time. I got to read this one. So, once upon a time, when the world was flat and there were no mountains. This is going to tell you how the mountains were created. Let me read that again. Once upon a time when the world was flat and there were no mountains, there lived two brothers, sons of Lumovig, the Great Spirit. The brothers were fond of hunting, and since no mountains had formed, there was no good place to catch wild pig and deer. And the older brother said, "Let us cause water to flow over all of the world and cover it, and then the mountains will rise up." So what does that tell us, right? What is this one legend? What can we pull from that? What I can pull from that is that it is likely that if this story holds water, if this story holds water, if the story is true, right? What are the implications? The implication is that we have mountains now, which means we've already been flooded because according to this legend, the floodwaters helped to create what we call mountains today. But when those floodwaters are removed and the world starts shaking once again, right? Those mountains melt, they fall apart, they crumble, they spread out, and the land becomes more desert-like and flat, okay? So it might be, and there's many references to this in various religions, especially in the Bible, where it talks many times about God melting the mountains like wax and stuff like that. So it's very interesting stuff, right? Always ask, what are the implications? Just suppose something might be true, and then say, what are the implications? And you might learn a lot. All right, Thailand. They have their own flood legends, or the deluge, etc. Let's see. There's various ones in Thailand. Thailand's a really interesting place. Let's see. I don't think I'm going to go over that one. It's pretty big. But that one's interesting too. Taiwan has their own flood legend as well. A great storm. I'm going to read this one. An old white-haired man came to Openaboom in a dream and told him that a great storm would soon come. There's a storm coming. Openaboom built a boat. Only Openaboom and his sister survived, positive and negative. They had a child, and they cut the child into pieces, and each piece became a new person. So, don't think of that physically, okay? If you think of it physically, you'd be like, oh man, those people are weird, they're savages, etc. No, it's a cartoonified story. It doesn't represent two actual human beings that cut up their child or whatever. It represents energetic qualities that people witnessed, and they cartoonified it, they characterized it, they personalized it, and personified it. Openaboom taught the new people their names, and they went forth to populate the earth. That's also resonates with many Native American tribes that talk about how when they had emerged, right, that their main ancestral god or goddess started giving all of the different nations of people different descriptions, different names, and they told them to spread out and repopulate the earth. So they went to the four corners of they went out and spread out southward into the extremities of the world. Vietnam, they have their own flood versions as well. Siberia also has their own flood myth. This one's really interesting. I want to read this real quick. In the mythology of the Ket people of the northern Eurasia, there have been many floods in the past. People and animals survived by grabbing onto pieces of floating turf. In the future, a final flood would bring back ancient Ket heroes. So this is the time when the oceans are introduced, and inversely, when they are removed. This is when mighty men of renown make their way back into our world. This is when you get the reintroduction of superheroes and giants and gods and strange monsters and creatures and stuff. This is when fantasy returns to the world, right? More so when you go into the red sky shift from the blue where we are now. So right now we don't have a lot of superheroes and monsters and crazy stuff like that. But when we go through this next shift and into this next cycle, you will see that reemerge once again. Excuse me. In Europe, in classical antiquity, obviously there's many different Greek flood myths in ancient Greek mythology. In medieval Europe, in the Baltics, in Breton, in Cornish. Excuse me. Sorry, one sec. In Welsh, in Norse, in Bashkir, in modern folklore, and in Finnish. Maybe we should finish with Finnish. Let's see here. What do we got up here in Finnish? The Finnish flood myth is recorded in the Kalevala rune entitled Ha'ava. All right, we're not going to finish with Finnish. That's fun though. Oceania in Australia. Oh, let's finish with Australia. Now we've got Tikalik. I'm sorry, Tidalik. This is interesting. It's about a frog. Frog symbolism comes up a lot too, especially in the Book of Revelation. Now, Tidalik, a water-holding frog, awoke one morning with an extreme thirst and began to drink until all of the fresh water was consumed. Now, do we see that happening in the world today? Yes. If you look, you'll find that much of the world's freshwater sources are starting to dry up. So Tidalik is slowly waking in our modern world. This is a sign and an omen to look for. Creatures and plant life everywhere began to die due to a lack of moisture. Other animals devised a plan for him to release all of the water that he had consumed by making him laugh. As Tidalik laughed, the water rushed out of him to replenish the lakes, the swamps, and the rivers. Now, frog is an interesting word. If you look it up, okay, remember the F, the letter F, is actually just a mispronunciation of the letter V, or even older, U or U, okay? U or U became V or V, and that V, over time, they pronounced it a little too harshly, and it became F. So F is actually an evolved version or a changed version of the letter V, which is a changed version of the letter U, which is the ancient Vav, which means of or attached to. So the word frog means of rog or rock or raga or rok, right? So we have to ask ourselves, what does rok mean, right? Let's check it out real quick. I'm up for that. Let's see. Let's just go to... Boom. All right, I'm going to etymonline.com, my favorite place for etymology. And I'm just going to type in R-O-K. Rok. Ah, look at what happens to pop up. Ragnarok. Ragnar or Ragnarok. So if we look down here, let me make it bigger for all of you. Ragnarok, right? You can see at the end it's Rok. If we go down here, we could see that Rogun means gods, or Ragna means gods, and then Rok means destined end, or even Rokir or Roker means twilight, which is interesting. So the destined end. So Forok or Vrok or Urok means of the end, of the destined end, or of the twilight, etc., which is interestingly enough related to Reker or Rekir, or if you're a Star Trek fan, Riker, right? Which means smoke or steam, which is the depressurization of our atmosphere. Interesting stuff, right? Now, there's more. There's many more. Polynesia. Okay, that was the end of that list. Thank goodness. All right. I don't like doing long lists of things. Now, I'm going to read you one more story, just as a bonus, when I come back from rolling the credits. thank you so much for visiting me this time. I'm gonna come back after I roll the credits, just because I don't want this to last too long. I want people to be able to get all this, but I want to come back. I also want to take a break and get a little more coffee. And I'm gonna read you one more story, and then I'm going to jump into the chat. So if you have any questions, I appreciate all of you who've been hanging in there and waiting for this. I'm gonna come back into the chat. I'm gonna make it so I can put your comments up on the screen. If you have any questions about the deluge, the flood, the cataclysm by fire, how things work, where the floodwaters come from, remind me and I'll be happy to tell you where the floodwaters come from, or the fires, any of that. Any questions specifically about this topic? Okay, if it's about a different topic, I will ignore the question and we'll move on. But I have one more story to tell you about a Titan a Jewish legend of a Titan who survived the Great Flood by riding on the back of a Titanic unicorn, following Noah and his family. All right, with that, we'll be right back. Enjoy these credits and take a quick break, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, sweet. We're back. Right on. Hey, so for those of you who stayed throughout the credits, this is a little bonus time. Just wanted to have a little extra session with all of you. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to get your questions ready and your comments ready. I'm going to pop out the chat real quick. Oh, hey, thank you guys so much for all of your support today. I super appreciate it. Wow. It's an honor, really. And we're coming up we're getting pretty close to like 90,000 subscribers, which means we're even closer to 100,000, which means we're really close to my gift I've been working on. It's all ready, actually. I mean, I could tidy it up a little bit. It's a pretty sweet gift, though, for everybody. All right, so I'm going to pop out this chat. This is what I do when I pop out the chat. You see? Pow, pop out the chat. All right, cool. Now I got the chat all popped out. I'm going to go ahead and shrink it a bit. Let's see. Uno momento. 1 second. All right, boom. Let's make it a bit bigger here on my side. All right, cool. I like that you guys hit the little button in the corner to do like the party and the hearts and stuff. I think that's awesome, especially when the credits are rolling. I really like that. All right, cool. Now, please do get your questions or your comments ready. Actually, let's start with that. I don't want to make anybody wait any longer. Let's start with that, and then I'll go ahead and read this this fun story with you guys just to sort of finish things off. So I'm jumping into the chat. Let me make sure I can put the chat up on the screen, or your comments up on the screen here. Live chat. Highlight. Pow. Bam. And we should be good to go. Let's test it out. We got, boom. Sage is putting up the instructions. If you'd like to see your comment highlighted and featured up on the screen, all you got to do is listen to Sage. She knows what she's talking about. And I'm going to scooch that down just a bit here. There we go. All right, cool. So now it is our time to hang out for a bit and talk. And I will talk for as long as people stay relevant to the topic. That's my rule. All right, sweet. So jumping in here, we got Taylor Michael Thompson, who says, Jay, where do the waters come from? The flood waters come from. Remember how we talked about how every other cycle, the cycle we're about to go into, has ionized oxygen that shoots up in the form of those blue ionized plasma beams, right? It fills the upper atmosphere in our world with fresh oxygen, and it continues filling up and filling up. And remember, we have a covering over our world. We live in a contained system, so that contained system is going to build in pressure over time. Remember that the pressure is going to be restored, okay? But our world will fill up with oxygen. When the world fills up with oxygen, right before the next apocalyptic cycle, not this one that we're coming into, but for those of you who survive this one, okay, and you go into the time of magic and all that stuff, the one after that is the flood that comes. When the atmosphere or the sky, when our atmosphere depressurizes once more, the ionized hydrogen from above comes in to ground itself, running into the ionized oxygen, creating water that will drop down by the buckets and gallons and gallons and gallons. So that's where the water from the sky comes from. There's also water that's inside of the earth underneath us. As they depressurize underneath us, their waters are going to float up, and guess where they're going to come? They're going to come up out of our ground. All right, cool. Good question. Good question. Next up, we've got, and I'm just going to call him as I see him here. Let's see. Choo-choo. Jack. Jack says, JayDreamerZ, why would God send Adam and Eve down to earth as if was a punishment? I don't know if they were sent down to earth. I think they were created from the earth, actually. We got Firpo Zacharias, who says, Jay, you helped me wake up 10 years. I really appreciate it. Hola from Colombia, South America. Hola, I like your little kitty picture. All right, we got Mr. E. Mr. E says, are you the blue beam? I believe that we all have a there's a remnant, okay? The remnant is the remnant of that energy signature that exists inside of us, okay? It's life, it's spirit. And the spirit comes from the earth. There's those of us who are children of the energy of the earth, I could say, which is the blue beam, or the children of Satan, the children of the devil, the children of the red plasma that comes down, etc. Max, thank you so much. I super appreciate you. High five. We got Cali Catalyst, who says, JayDreamerZ, is it the only northern hemisphere that gets scorched by the sun, and does anything happen to the southern part? Good question. So the northern hemisphere, I believe, is the only place that's going to get scorched or burnt the most, right? The light still may reach other places. But the northern hemisphere is going to be affected the worst, right? And does anything happen to the southern part? Yes. So anything that happens in the northern hemisphere is going to have an adverse effect on the southern hemisphere as well. So, if the sun if daylight is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, you will experience longer and longer nights. It'll get colder and colder, and you'll have extremes because as the sun heats up, it's going to leave behind a trail of superheated atmosphere around it, right? And then that atmosphere is going to swirl off into the southern areas where you guys are, which is going to create huge storms and stuff. All right, good question. Who else we got? Chris Harvey is the next one I saw. What is a great year? I'm not sure what that's in reference to. I'm super sorry. I don't know how to answer that one. Amanda Chamberlain says, Jay, you say that we don't want apocalypse to be during the winter solstice. Is that for northern or southern hemisphere? That's for all of you. Good question, Amanda. I believe personally that the winter solstice brings upon the great deluge, the great flood. That's very difficult to survive. Okay, that's way harder to survive. It's possible, and it's probable that there will be a remnant that survive, but not as many as survive during the time we're going into now, which is the time of fire. Okay, and it doesn't matter with that one. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. All of the legends agree. Most of them agree that the entire world becomes flooded. So no matter where you are, you will be affected by it. All right, so next up we've got, let's see, LMM, who says, I think somebody's asking just in general. Nino Romello says, Jay, where does the water come from? We already talked about that one. Thanks for asking, though. Yeah, make sure you put in @JayDreamerZ. Please type all of it in. That'll help me out a lot over here on my side. Overlord says, JayDreamerZ, hey Jay, great stream. Do you think that existing underground water sources will be the key to survival during the wait for our atmosphere to recharge and for rain to come again? Thank you. Yes, I'm going to say yes for that one. As far as trying to find a source of water in order to drink, yes, I do believe that learning how to dig a well is going to be a huge thing to learn. It's going to be really important to learn how to dig your own wells. We don't do that as much these days because we have an excess amount of water, but when all of the oceans and lakes and all that stuff are removed, learning how to dig your well and get down into the earth for water is going to be pretty important. Also, I want to say this, that things like eating and drinking are going to be less important the further you get into the golden age, because the atmosphere will be so charged around you that your physical body will have less need for nourishment in order to charge it up. You know what I mean? Less sleep, less eating, stuff like that. All right, cool. We got, let's see, who else was next? We got Ravel to Expand says, are you a distortion of insanity? I'm not sure what you're asking me. We got Nino, who says, JayDreamerZ, where does the water come from? It comes, so I kind of already answered that one, so you'll have to rewind. I'm so sorry. We got HWMO Liberty, who says, JayDreamerZ, is Texas safe? I will tell you right now, no place in the world is safe. None of them. Okay. Every single place in the world will be affected by the apocalypse, not by individual cataclysms, but by the depressurization of our atmosphere. No place in the entire world is safe, but the safest place is inside of Mount Meru at the true geographic North Pole. So that's the safest place. And last I checked, Texas is not there. Jack, what's up? Jack says, JayDreamerZ, cause God sent fallen angels as a punishment. Question. So I don't, let's do this. Please just try to keep it short. Don't do compound questions and stuff, because I just want to try to go as fast as I can. So I'm just going to answer that first question. Did God send fallen angels as a punishment? So that depends on what you define as being God, right? I'm sure your God is probably different than how I perceive God to me. You know what I mean? And the angels, for me, are those creatures and beings that floated down out of the heavens or out of space or whatever that's beyond our sky. They floated down into our world. I will say that many of those things that come down from above seem to indicate that they may likely be charged in the negative spectrum. Okay, but I won't say that it's for a punishment at all. I believe that all of these things that happen are natural events. I don't believe that God is looking down at all the bad people and that, individually saying, I hate you, I want you all to die, or anything like that. I believe that it's all a part of a natural cycle to restore an equilibrium, a neutrality, to do a reset, to give everybody a fair chance. However, I can totally see why people would think that, it's all happening because of the rise of evil and the rise of badness and stuff like that. So I get that. I do. Let's see. What else we got? We got Orphic Metamorphic in the chat who says, JayDreamerZ, in the Australian Tidalik story, the other animals got the frog to release the waters by making him laugh. Do you think that is relevant? I sure do, actually. So we talked about before the laughing plague, right? There's the jitterbug, like the Wizard of Oz reference, right? These gases that are released by the earth, and the new gases that are created in this sort of cosmic wedding. Okay, there's a wedding between the earth and the sky, and it's an alchemical wedding, or it's a chemical romance, just like the band My Chemical Romance. That's exactly what it is. It's a chemical mixture between the elements that are being introduced from the sky or from the heavens, or the cosmic chemicals like hydrogen, which is basically reacts to everything, right? And the gases that are given off by the earth herself, and they mix together and they create pockets and clouds of various types of gases. One of those that will be created is nitrous oxide, right? The oxygen that shoots up from the earth, the ionized oxygen, will mix with the nitrogen that is abundant already in our atmosphere, creating nitrous oxide in many places, which will cause many people to laugh. So that's my connection on that one. Let's see. I'm jumping back into the chat, and let's see. There's a lot of stuff. So if I skipped you, I'm super sorry. It's not on purpose. It's just that the chat's going way fast right now. Joey Kirk says, JayDreamerZ. I actually answered that question at the very beginning of this video. We broke it down, so I highly recommend rewinding when you have the time and just kind of replaying the beginning of the video. Dragonfly says, JayDreamerZ, where do you stand on the trumpet and the bowl judgments from the book of Revelation when it comes to the end of the apocalypse? Okay, sweet. So the trumpets, I believe, are the sounds that you hear, or that we will hear, whenever there are these explosions from the inner earth plasma being released, right? There's a huge explosion, which is the depressurization of the atmosphere itself, but there are many smaller trumpets in the form of the gases that are inside of the earth, especially those that are ionized, exploding out of volcanoes and cave systems and stuff like that. And I believe that those are the trumpets that will be announcing the greatest trumpet, or the greatest explosion and thunder, which comes from Mount Meru itself. Let's see. I'm going to try to catch up here. I'm trying not to skip people. I'm so sorry, but there's a lot of people. There's a lot. So let's go to BB. Do I believe that the black holes or portals located in the oceans have anything to do with the floods and the serpent monsters in the ancient times? Yes, totally. So there are portals under us just as well as there are portals above us, okay? Or that there will be portals above us. Windows, there are windows, but they're closed right now. Those windows will open one day. And when they open in the sky, they will open in the earth, right? So there will be creatures and all kinds of things that will come up from the third world underneath us into the fourth world where we are, just like some of you will go from your fourth world and up into the fifth world, or place, or realm, however you want to say it. Max Collins says, does pressure release create vapor instantly? No, I would not say that there's worldwide instant vapor. I would say that it probably takes some time to spread out. So you will see like a mist that rolls in. So where it would begin is that depressurization point, and then it will swirl outward, and the fog will sort of, swirl around the world as it fills up the world. Good question. And the pressure release is rapid depressurization, not instant depressurization. That would kill everything, right? And since there were survivors in the past, we know it's not instant depressurization. It's just rapid depressurization. So that's a good study. Denali Princess says, JayDreamerZ, I'm curious about the canals that link oceans. What are your thoughts on why the different levels in between? I'm super sorry, Denali. I just don't understand your question. So I'm going to have to move on. Let's see. We got Ayub who says, hi, JayDreamerZ. What are your thoughts on there potentially being other continents beyond Antarctica? I like that question. So I believe that there is a dome covering to our world, and that there is a surface world out beyond our dome covering. That is like an alien type of atmosphere, or it's probably very similar to Ant-Man. Whenever Ant-Man goes down into the I forgot what it's called because I'm I'm trying to answer so many people's questions right now. I forgot words. The quantum realm. When Ant-Man goes down to the quantum realm, I imagine that's kind of like what the spaces between the covered worlds looks like out there in the fractal verse, right? In the in-between or in the hallways of the worlds. And I believe that there are, liminal spaces between each covered world or whatever out there. All right. Next up, we've got, let's see, Adam Forrest says, why are the stars going weird as also the moon has changed? Good question, Adam. In short, I believe it's responsible. What is responsible for that? Man, this is really good questions. What is responsible for the stars, starting to act really weird and the moon acting weird and even the sun is acting weird too, is because the plasma that is above the dome of the world is going into flux and it's acting a lot different than it used to. It's contracting smaller every season. Okay. And it's getting bigger and then it's getting smaller and smaller every season. And as it gets smaller, it's going to hit different points on the dome. And that dome has craters from all of the electricity and stuff that's zapped it and stuff like that. And all the holes that have blown open from inside before, right? So as it hits new points, getting smaller and smaller, the edges of that will hit different craters and stuff or domes that are on our greater dome, the sky of the ceiling of our world. And the light will bend in different directions, which will give us like chromatic aberrations or comets that appear right before the end. And that's how you can tell. It also, when it gets smaller, it creates a brighter star or a brighter sun or a brighter moon. And those objects tend to get smaller in appearance too. So it looks like they're getting further away, but they're really not. They're getting closer, they're just getting smaller, and they're getting hotter. Feral Heart 11 says, JayDreamerZ, I'm a witch and I take the gods and goddesses as real beings, as above, so below. I think our creators look just like us, but they're also so much more mythology. You help me to connect everything. That's very good to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. All right, I'm just going to skip to the front because I felt like I've already skipped like a lot of people. So I'm reading the first one I see in the front. I'm sorry if I skipped yours, but I don't want to get too far behind. Joanne Betts says, JayDreamerZ, how did radium get into the flood or the groundwaters, especially in Florida water? Good question. I'll be honest, I'm still studying radium. It's very interesting to me, but I will say that it seems that whenever our atmosphere becomes extremely electrically charged, and especially whenever you have ionized hydrogen that comes down and hits and charges the different elements, it has the ability to change them, right? As well as the blue ionized oxygen that shoots up in a very strong current out of the world itself. It has the ability to imbue the rocks around it and the earth around it and charge those rocks and metals and stuff, changing them and causing some of them to become radioactive, right? Which is kind of where radium, that's where radioactive comes from, is radium basically, or that's the root of it. Tara Michelle, thank you so much for your donation. I appreciate it. All right, let's see. We got, let's see. I'm going to go to Finichin Finn. What's up, Finichin? Thanks for being a member. Says, JayDreamerZ, how long will we have once we hear the explosion, and where would be the best place to go? Excellent question. So there's different signs that you can listen into, and I try to share those signs on my channel from time to time. So you'll have to, be subscribed and check out the videos and stuff. It's a lot of content, so you'll have to sift through some of it. One of the things that you can know when to take off to Mount Meru, if that's what you're intending on doing, is listen for the wars and the rumors of wars. When the energy gets so charged up and amped up that humanity is on the brink of World War III, that's a huge sign that it's about time to go. Also, the Bible talks about the Euphrates River drying up, all these different rivers that are drying up and stuff, in order to make a way so that we can cross over on bare feet, so that we don't have to like swim across the Arctic Ocean and stuff like that. A way will be made for us. Believe that. Okay. Hope that helped out. Once you hear the explosions, well, when you hear the explosions, it's a good chance you might want to stay where you are for a bit. Like, everything's going to float up into the sky. So I highly recommend, and this is really important, study the solstices, okay? Especially be prepared around the summer solstice for the next one. I don't know if it's the next summer solstice or the one after that, but I feel pretty confident that the apocalypse, the next cycle we go into, will happen during the summer solstice time. Okay, I don't know which summer solstice it might be, but that's what I'm feeling inside of myself based on my research and my experience. Okay, so around the summer solstice time, I don't recommend being out in the park in a picnic with your family and stuff, because boom, when you hear that pop, everything's just going to start floating. Right now, you might not get sucked up into the sky immediately. You might just float for a bit until the winds start to pick up. These things will take time depending upon how far away from the geographic North Pole you are, right? The winds will take a little time to start swirling around and stuff. So if you do find yourself outside, make a mental note, grab onto whatever you can, okay? Get 2 handfuls of grass, hug a tree, like, you know what I mean? Whatever you can, get underground if you can, but go somewhere safe and be somewhere safe, which is what the holidays were originally designed for. You're welcome, Adam Forrest. Thank you. Tara Michelle, thank you once again for your donation and your little rose. I super appreciate it, and I like that. Jack Alinsky says, JayDreamerZ, wasn't the flood because of the Nephilim giants? No. Let me finish reading that. Wasn't the flood because of the Nephilim giants that needed to all be killed and could have been avoided by not sending them here if it had been to procreate? No, I know that there's a rumor that many people believe that the floodwaters were sent in order to kill the giants. No, evil was everywhere. Okay, that's what all of these myths and legends talk about. It's not just like, oh, the giants were evil. No, humanity was evil. Okay, the energy in the world entirely, for the most part, was bad. It was all bad. Okay. The giants also, they're part of it too. But people saw that the giants were here around the time and in charge, basically, around the time that these apocalyptic cycles came. So they correlate the giants with the world being destroyed, just like they correlate the rise in sexual diversity and preferences and stuff like that with the end of the world. And so they blame whatever they see according to their perspective, if that helps you out. All right, let's see. Jumping back into the chat here, Rage Against the Machine. Good to see you. High vibes to you too. PJ Warden says, darn, Jay, I'm so bummed I'm missing your live shows. Aw, that sucks. But at least you can rewind it, and at least you can check it out again, right? The Naughty Bee says, JayDreamerZ, with such an influx of oxygen, do you think that the oxygen will ignite and be part of the scorching of the earth? No, I do not. That's a good question. I don't believe that the oxygen is going to blow us all up or anything like that, because it hasn't done that in the past. If anything, it will actually help revitalize us and everything that lives here. So, for example, insects are going to grow to gigantic sizes because they breathe through their skin or whatever they have for skin, their coverings or whatever, their exoskeletons. So all the insects are going to get way bigger. You will be revitalized and you'll take in more oxygen content. Being able to like hold your breath longer and run faster, and it'll have a lot of positive effects, but I don't believe that it's going to just blow up. That's a good question though. That's a reasonable question. Sojio, good to see you, Sojio. All right. That's all of the questions that I see right now in the chat. Let's see. Actually, I saw one more. Ravel to Expand says, is all conflict eternal? No. Everything is external and internal. Everything has balance. There is an internal and an external. There's an above and a below. There's an in and an out. There's the law of cycles and rhythms, that everything is balanced. Okay, that it's in and out. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and that's the end of our question and answers session, I guess you could say. So I'm going to stop right there because there was a little pause there in the chat. If I missed your question, I'm super sorry, but stay tuned and we'll do it again sometime. What I'm going to do is take this off, boom, and I'm going to read this one. This one is actually a legend, a Jewish legend, about a Titan who survived the flood, right? Also, to the person that asked me, like, was the flood designed to wipe out all the giants? It's not reasonable to assume that. If we remember that even biblically, it said that there were giants in the earth in those days, meaning the days of Noah, and also afterward. Right, so it didn't wipe out all of the giants because there was giants in the earth afterwards, right? Or if it was intended to just wipe them out, there shouldn't have been any more giants. If you're just naturally evil when you become a giant, which I don't think that they are, right? But anyways, here's a story about a giant who survives the flood. Many of you know this giant as King Og, which is really interesting. We've done quite a few studies on King Og. Now, was King Og a physical, actual giant? Possibly. That's what some of the legends say. Or was he representative of one of those huge beams of light? I leave that up to you. Now, hold on, let me get some water. Here is our story. Just before, now I'm going to tell you this is not in the Bible, okay? So this is an extra-biblical Jewish legend. Just before the world was drowned, all of the animals gathered in front of the ark, and Father Noah carefully inspected them. All ye that lie down shall enter and be saved from the deluge that is about to destroy the world, he said. Ye that stand cannot enter. And then the various creatures began to march towards or forward into the ark. Father Noah watched them closely. He seemed troubled. I wonder, he said to himself, how I shall obtain a unicorn, and how I shall get it into the ark. So now Noah's thinking about getting a unicorn into the ark. And he says, I can bring thee a unicorn, Father Noah. He heard in a voice of thunder. Let me say that again. I can bring thee a unicorn, Father Noah. He heard in a voice of thunder, and turning around he saw the giant, Og. But thou must agree to save me from the flood. Begone, cried Noah. Thou art a demon, not a human being. I can have no dealings with thee. Pity me, whined the giant. See how my figure is shrinking. Once I was so tall that I could drink the water from the clouds and toast fish in the sun. I fear not that I shall be drowned, but that all the food will be destroyed and that I shall perish of hunger. Noah, however, only smiled, but he grew serious again when Og brought a unicorn. It was as big as a mountain. Although the giant said that it was the smallest that he could find. It lay down in front of the ark, and Noah saw by that action that he must save it. For some time he was puzzled what to do, but at last a bright idea struck him. He attached the huge beast to the ark by a rope fastened to its horn so that it could swim alongside and be fed. Og seated himself on a mountain near the hand and watched the rain pouring down. Faster and faster it fell in torrents until the rivers overflowed and the waters began to rise rapidly on the land and sweep all of the things away. Father Noah stood gloomily before the door of the ark until the water reached up to his neck, and then it swept him inside. The door closed with a bang, and the ark rose gallantly on the flood and began to move along. The unicorn swam alongside as it passed Og. The giant jumped onto its back. See, Father Noah, he cried with a huge chuckle. You will have to save me after all. I will snatch all of the food you put through the window for the unicorn. Ha ha ha. Noah saw that it was useless to argue with Og, who might indeed sink the ark with his tremendous strength. I will make a bargain with thee, he shouted from a window. I will feed thee, but thou must promise to be a servant to my descendants. Og was very hungry, so he accepted the conditions, and he devoured his first breakfast. The rain continued to fall in great big sheets and shut out the light of day. Inside of the ark, however, all was bright and cheerful, for Noah had collected the most precious of the stones of the earth and had used them for the windows. Their radiance illuminated the whole of the 3 stories in the ark. Some of the animals were troublesome, and Noah got no sleep at all. The lion had a bad attack of fever. In a corner, a bird slept the whole of the time. This was the phoenix. Wake up, said Noah one day. It's feeding time. Thank you, returned the bird. I saw thou wert busy, Father Noah, so I would not trouble thee. Thou art a good bird, said Noah, much touched. Therefore thou shalt never die. In reference to the phoenix. One day the rain ceased. The clouds rolled away, and the sun shone brilliantly again. How strange the world looked! It was like a vast ocean. Nothing but water could be seen anywhere, and only 1 or 2 of the highest mountaintops peeped above the flood. All of the world was drowned, and Noah gazed on the desolate scene. from one of the windows with tears in his eyes. Aug, riding gaily on the unicorn behind the ark, was quite happy. Ha ha ha! He laughed gleefully. I shall be able to eat and drink just as much as I like now, and shall never be troubled by those tiny creatures, the mortals. Be not so sure, said Noah. Those tiny mortals shall be thy masters, and shall outlive thee, and the whole race of giants and demons. The giant did not relish this prospect. He knew that whatever Noah prophesied would come true. And he was so sad that he ate no food for 2 days, and began to grow smaller and thinner. He became more and more unhappy as the day went by, and the water subsided. The mountains began to appear. At last the ark rested on Mount Ararat, and Og's long ride came to an end. I will soon leave thee, Father Noah, he said. I shall wander around the world to see what is left of it. Thou canst not go until I permit thee, said Noah. Hast thou forgotten our compact so soon? Thou must be my servant. I have work for thee. Giants are not fond of work, and Aug, who was the father of all giants, was particularly lazy. He cared only to eat and to sleep, and he knew that he was in Noah's power, and he shed bitter tears when he saw the land appear again. Stop, commanded Noah. Dost thou wish to drown the world once more with thy big tears? Kind of reminds me of Alice in Wonderland. So Aug sat on a mountain and rocked from side to side, weeping silently to himself. He watched the animals leave the ark and had to do all of the hard work when Noah's children built the houses. Daily he complained that he was shrinking to the size of mortals, for Noah said that there was not too much food. One day, Noah said to him, Come with me, Aug. I'm going around the world. I am commanded to plant fruit and flowers to make the earth beautiful. I need thy help. For many days they wandered all over the earth, and Aug was compelled to carry the heavy bag of seeds. The last thing that Noah planted was the grapevine. What is this, food or drink? Asked Aug. Both, replied Noah. It can be eaten or its juice made into wine. And as he planted it, he blessed the grape. Be thou, he said, a plant pleasing to the eye, bear fruit that will be food for the hungry, and a health-giving drink to the thirsty and to the sick. Aug grunted. I will offer up sacrifice to this wonderful fruit, he said. May I not do so now that our labors are over? Noah agreed, and the giant brought a sheep, a lion, a pig, and a monkey. First he slaughtered the sheep, and then the lion. When a man shall taste but a few drops of the wine, he said, he shall be as harmless as a sheep. But when he takes a little more, he shall be as strong as a lion. And then Og began to dance around the plant, and he killed the pig and the monkey. Noah was very much surprised. I am giving thy descendants 2 extra blessings, said Og, chuckling. He rolled over and over on the ground in great glee, and then he said, When a man shall drink too much of the juice of the wine, then he shall become a beast like the pig, and if he still continues to drink, he shall behave foolishly like a monkey. And that is why unto this day, too, much wine makes a man silly. Og himself often drank too much, and many years afterward, when he was a servant to the patriarch Abraham, the latter scolded him until he became so frightened that he dropped a tooth. Abraham made an ivory chair for himself out of the tooth of Og. Afterwards, Og became king of Bashan, but he forgot about his compact with Noah, and instead of helping the Israelites to obtain Canaan, or Canaan, he opposed them. I will kill them all with one blow, he declared. Exerting all of his strength, his enormous strength, he uprooted a mountain, raising it high above his head as he prepared to drop it onto the camp of the Israelites and to crush it. But a wonderful thing happened. The mountain was full of grasshopper ants who had bored millions of tiny holes in it, and when King Og raised the great mass, it crumbled in his hand, and it fell over his head and around his neck like a collar. He tried to pull it off, but his teeth became entangled in the mass. As he danced in a rage, in pain, Moses, the leader of the Israelites, approached him. Moses was a tiny man compared to Og. He was only 10 ells high. That's about 15 feet. Give or take. And he carried with him a sword of the same length, or some accounts say a staff. With a mighty effort, he jumped 10 ells into the air. That's a super jump. Less increased buoyancy, right? He jumped 10 ells into the air and, raising the sword, managed to strike the giant on the ankle, the Achilles heel, and wound him mortally. Thus, after many years, did the terrible giant of the flood perish for breaking his word to Father Noah. And that is the story of King Og, the Titan giant, who rode and survived the great flood and the deluge on the back of a unicorn. I hope that you enjoyed that story. Some of the legends also say that Abraham, whenever, like right before his cousin or his nephew Lot, right, his city was going to be destroyed, Sodom and Gomorrah, right, that somebody came back and reported to him that his nephew was kidnapped and stuff, and some legends say that someone that helped out Abraham was actually King Og, still acting under servitude, upholding his promise to Noah. Right on, sweet. Well, I hope everyone had a great time today. Please leave lots of comments. I love all the comments that we've been getting lately here on my channel, and I hope that you have a great time. I'll see you on Sunday for Truth in Movies. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.